Hello, hello, hello. I am Recover18. Today I am bringing you another Rainbow Six Extraction operator guide. Today we're going to be talking about Hibana. Hibana is a very, very interesting character in this game. There's a lot to talk about. She's one of the more difficult operators to master for a number of different reasons, and we'll get right into that here in just a moment. Before we get into that, though, I want to make sure that everybody is following my Twitch channel at Merkaba18, and please subscribe to this channel. Make sure to like the video and let me know what you think in the comments below. It helps me grow and it makes my day. Thank you so much for doing that. If you haven't already, please do. Okay, so Hibana is an interesting character for a number of different reasons. A lot of these operators have pretty well-balanced kits, and they tend to be pretty good at one thing, and they have a little bit of a niche. Their gun kit probably complements them, etc., or they tend to replace a specific type of thing in the game. So I would describe Hibana as a offensive character. She is a breach character as well, and I would describe her as pretty dominated by her ultimate. And what I mean by that is her weapons are really, really bad. Just to be candid, her weapons are some of the worst in the game, in my opinion. But her ultimate, especially at max level, tends to be one of the best in the game. So we'll get into her loadout in just a moment. But if I had to summarize Hibana, essentially she is a breach class and an offensive mobility class. Kind of like essentially her ult is sort of like a targeted C4 is the best way that I can describe it. And it sort of, and it definitely recharges itself every so often. We'll get into that here in just a moment too. We are going to show you some in-game footage, so don't worry about that. We'll show you what this looks like in real time here in just a moment. At level 1, you get these, at the base level, you get these explosives called Kairos. Fires explosives that remote detonate and stick to all surfaces. Ignores any enemy carapace. That last part is really, really important, so keep that in mind as we talk about this. At level 2, her upgrade is going to be a reload time speed increase, meaning she reloads the Kairos faster. Detonation delay is reduced, meaning when you deploy it and then explode it, it's going to have a delayed reaction. Keep in mind that, as I said, this is very much like a deployable C4, and that reload speed and that reduction in the time between the deployment and the explosion is super important. At level 3, she gets a new shotgun. I almost never use this shotgun. I think it's one of the worst guns in the game, so I don't recommend it, but, you know, there is a way in which you can use it. I just don't think it's a very good gun. At level 4, you're going to get a big speed boost here at 30% increase to movement speed, which is always important in this game. Most of these operators get some level of speed boost or armor reduction or increase. So at level 5, you're going to get an additional 30 health for when you revive, which is a huge deal. She tends to res with a lot more health than the average operator. And so when you use a revive kit, or if you're working with classes like Finka, Doc, or Rook, whenever you revive, you're going to have more health, which means that you're going to survive more likely. At level 6, you're going to see a new secondary, which is probably her best gun, in my opinion. We'll talk about that and why in just a minute. At level 7, you're going to see a round level increase to 4. You start with 3, you get 4 at level 7. Really helpful. And then at level 8, you're going to get a damage reduction. Any incoming damage will be reduced by 20%. Very, very helpful with Hibana. She tends to be a little bit squishier than the average operator, so that damage reduction is a big deal. At level 9, you're going to see an MP5. This is a very interesting gun for a number of reasons, and I will talk about that in the loadout here in just a second. At the max level, 1 round is now recharged every 45 seconds, and the damage is increased to 480. Huge buff there. This is one of the best level 10 operator skills. Huge increase to her damage, and every 45 seconds you're going to get a new round. So basically, the way to think about this is that every 45 seconds or so, you're going to end up with a new C4. So let's talk about her loadout. As I said, her ultimate, as you just saw, is one of the best, and you'll see it in the in-game footage here in just a minute. Her ultimate is one of the best in the games. Super high utility. It recharges. You don't need to use recharge refreshes or anything like that for her ult, and you'll get one every 45 seconds. There's a bunch of different ways you can use her ult, and we'll talk about that in the in-game footage. But the downside to Hibana is that her gun kit is one of the worst in the game, in my opinion. And it's really not even close, if in my personal opinion, and I know that there will be some that disagree with this, but let's talk about why I think that is. Type 89 is a really, really high recoil gun with a really, really high fire rate for an assault rifle. So, and critically, her capacity on the mag is only 20. So what that means is that it does do a decent amount of damage, but what's going to happen is you're gonna have a empty clip before you know it. One of the ways to sort of counter that is to try to obviously learn to control the recoil a little bit, but also to maybe try to fire a little bit slower or use it in like a single fire mode or something like that. That's one of the ways you can kind of counter that. But still, in my opinion, this is one of the weaker guns in the game. Plus, in the game, like beyond the stats of it, it just feels like it's trying to be an SMG assault rifle, and it doesn't work very well, in my opinion. And in a game in which the things get hot pretty quickly, you having 20 rounds on this style of gun is just not great. It just isn't really fitting a niche, in my opinion. It's not as good as the HK in a single fire shot environment. It fires way faster than the average assault rifle. The recoil pattern's kind of bad. The reload time is slow, and the mag capacity is really, really low. And so it just doesn't do any one thing very well. And all of the things that it does do, it's just kind of hard to control and master. So you've watched any of my videos in this game before, you know that I don't particularly care for shotguns, and this one is no exception. Low capacity there. It is pretty good up close, as all shotguns are, but the recoil pattern is really bad, and it's really hard to manage and deal with the shotgun pretty quickly. So just not a great gun. I don't think it's your best option in her kit. You can make a case that if you use her right, that you don't need to worry too much. If you're using her ult ability right, you don't need to worry too much about the reload and stuff. And there's a lot of people who use Hibana who use her shotgun. The other thing to keep in mind too with this is like the damage reduction on the suppressor is really, really bad. And so even if you wanted to go quiet with it, it's just not your best option, I don't think. And then that leads me into gun number 3 here that you get during her advancement. I don't like this gun myself for a number of different reasons. And here's the main reason. You are forced, no matter what you do with this gun, to have a suppressor on it. So it is a forced suppressed gun. It is, I believe at the time of the filming of this video, only gun in this game that has a forced suppressor. So when you carry this, there is one way that you can kind of utilize this as a weapon, but we'll talk about that in more depth here in just a second. So I tend to use the max level scopes, the vert scope, but you're going to automatically have a suppressor here, which means, as you can see there, the damage is incredibly low. 18, one of the lowest damage guns in the game, and the fire rate's pretty high. It even has a higher level clip, though, however, than her assault rifle, which is an interesting element to this. And one of the reasons I think her kit is really just not good overall. Pretty decent clip. It's a decent gun. Certainly probably her best secondary best primary gun in my opinion, but it's, again, not my favorite. So what I tend to do, because this gun is forced to have a suppressor and I really hate her other guns, is I tend to use this as her MP5 with the silencer as her secondary quiet option. And then I tend to go with her P229 as the primary gun, and I use that as a loud option. So this is, you can take the suppressor off. You can see the difference in the damage is substantial there. I think this is one of the higher damage secondary guns. It does a lot of damage, 51 per shot, pretty easy recoil to control. Mobility's high, capacity's high. The fire rate, as long as you got a pretty good fast fire finger, you're going to use this to pack a punch quite a bit. And with the recoil control and the muzzle brake, you should be able to do a lot of things with this. Now, that is, obviously it's a pistol, so it's got a single shot fire, and that leaves her with a secondary that is a little bit more suppressed. So what ends up happening with Hibana here, as you can see, is you get reversed, whereas normally you would have a primary weapon that is unsuppressed and loud and does the primary amount of damage. In this case, you're going to be sort of pigeonholed into using her pistol as your high damage option. And that's really, or you could make an argument for making a shotgun as her primary, and then using like a bearing 9 as the secondary. But it really just depends on personal preference, and it really is kind of a weird kit and one that is unique and not my favorite. But let's talk about one other thing here with the bearing 9. This is a pretty, let's go ahead and see, we can put the compensator here, and you can see in the recoil pattern there that even with the compensator there, and with a reflex scope, it is really, really bad in terms of the recoil pattern. You can't even see where the red is. So it's very, very difficult to control the recoil on this gun. One of the highest recoil pattern spreads in the entire game. But that's also because it has one of the highest fire rates in the gun, or in the game, and the damage is pretty high. So if you can control the recoil, this is a really, really good option as a secondary. But if you have a hard time with recoil and you're afraid of dumping the mag in a split, because it will dump the mag in less than a second, you're going to end up with a lot of trouble with this gun. So just make sure to practice it and use it to the best of your ability. But this is a high skill option, in my opinion, one that I don't recommend for new players or players on a controller. It's much, much easier to control it on mouse and keyboard. So as I said, Hibana's, one more time, Hibana's guns are just not great. So I would put her gun set as one of the worst in the game, and I would put her ultimate as one of the best in the game. So there's not a lot of true balance to her, and she tends to have a little bit of a niche as an option, but when you use her correctly, she can be very effective. So she does have a pretty balanced kit in terms of speed and armor. She takes a little bit more damage than the best operators in terms of armor, and she moves a little bit slower than the fastest operators, but she's not going to, take as much damage as IQ, and she's not going to move as slow as Doc, for example. So just keep that in mind as you're using her. She is pretty quick and she's pretty balanced. So what I would recommend is to remember that she is a sort of a walking C4 that she can deploy. We'll see that in game here in just a minute. So what you can do is you can pair that with a C4 and a revive kit if you're learning her, or if you're using a revive build, or you can, use her as a rush pistol and just run around and just blast stuff with C4. You can also carry an explosive harness in order to maximize her C4 usage. Use her ult, carry 10 C4s, and you're just going to walk around blowing stuff up. Everything around you is going to die before it even touches you. But again, those are also dependent on your skill, right? And what your team needs, personal preferences, your play style, all those things are going to factor into how you use her. But the key takeaway is that she is a walking C4, and you need to maximize that however you plan to, whether that's within your group or based on how you play, what you need in a given mission, etc. So just keep that in mind, and then we'll talk about some of the in-game footage and put it to good use here in just a second. All right, here we are in game with Hibana. I want to go ahead and show you some basics. As I mentioned in the menu walkthrough there, this is how I tend to personally use Hibana, and the way I think she's used most effectively based on my playstyle. So keep that in mind, and she's also a max level operator here, so always keep that in mind with these guides. The other thing to keep in mind here is I've brought her rush pistol, and I'm going to show you how to utilize her ability a little bit with that. So let's start with some basics here. This is the MP5 silenced, and as you can hear here, it is a forced silence with a pretty quick reload there. And then I tend to use her pistol as a loud option. As you can hear, it's kind of loud there. And so what you're going to do is you're going to pull out your ult using your ult button. And here's a basic tip to keep in mind here. As Ash tries to talk over me there, I apologize. So if you are not ADS with her Kairos launcher, it will do horizontal, just like this. If you aim down sights, it'll do vertical, just like this. Now keep in mind, you can deploy up to 4 of these at a time, and then they recharge every 45 seconds. You can see in the bottom right there, the little timer is showing you when you're going to have more. So you can deploy them using your aim and fire just like you would with a gun. And then to deploy them again, or to explode them, you will hit the alt button one more time, and all of them will go off at the same time. So it's important to remember that any of the Kairos that are out will explode when you hit the explode button. You can choose to, if you want, use them in a way that will explode one at a time, or you can choose to use 2, 3, or 4, but whatever you deploy will automatically explode whenever you explode it. So let's talk about, we have hit another one here. So let's talk about one of the basic ways you can use her as a breach class. This is very similar to Siege, and as you can see here, the closer you get, the higher the spread. The further away you get, the tighter the spread. And this is going to come into play here in just a little bit. We'll talk some more about it. So let's do this for the sake of it. We're going to deploy it right there on a door right there. You can explode it. No more door. That is a pretty classic little basic breach class that you can have there. And these are soft walls right here. You can kind of see that this is a soft wall. You can punch through it, explode it with a C4. Sledge can walk through that with a hammer, etc., etc. So that's one of the ways that she tends to overlap with. She can be used as a breach class in the same way that Sledge can. She can also be used as a offensive class, an explosive device, the same way that Fuze can, with the primary difference being that with Fuze, you're going to end up having to attach it to a wall here, whereas her Kairos can basically, and I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, so please let me know in the comments below if I am or not. These can be deployed on any surface. They can also be deployed on Archeans. So that's the main difference between her and Sled, or her and Fuze, excuse me, is that it can go anywhere, whereas Fuze, you have to attach it to a soft wall or a door in order to deploy it. So let's talk about, you can also use it as a way to create holes. So let's put 2 there. And now, in the same way that you would use her in Siege, you can hide back here. Boom. Huge wall right through there. So you get lines of sight, and you also will have the ability to walk through this, whereas before you may not have. So that's one of the basic tips that you have with her. You can have all kinds of different patterns, all kinds of different ways, and then you can kind of also finish these off. It takes you a minute, but you can finish these off with melees. So that's sort of how you can use her as a breach class. These will attach to nests. They will attach to enemies of any kind. I think at max level, her ability will 2-shot an Apex. So if you shoot 2 of these pretty quickly at an Apex, boom, boom, deploy it, explode it, that Apex is melted. You can also use it alongside C4, so you can deploy that on an Apex, use it on a throw out a C4, explode both of them. You know, depending on how many of your charges you have left, if you have some C4 in your pocket, use your ult, then explode it, hit it with a C4. Before your team even needs to respond, you're dead. Or the Apex is dead, excuse me. So just keep that in mind that it can deploy in an area as well. So like, let's say there's a, like this guy's coming at me. Boom. Nest and Grunt are dead. Nest, Grunt dead. Didn't get the howl off. And now we have an elite, so we'll deal with him in just a minute. Let's let our ability recharge here, and I want to kind of show you one of the cool ways that you can use Hibana. You can pull your pistol out, hit it, and now you are completely immune to damage. No more grunts. And you can also move around pretty quickly. And that also can be paired with her breach as well in order to really, really become an effective operator. And that is one of the advanced tips that I will give you, is that you, as you move across and learn to master this ability and this class, you will start to use her in different ways. You can use her with a rush pistol. You can use her with a revive kit, any number of things. All right, now we have an elite storm spiker. Let's do some melee. Have him come on over here. And boom. You can see it did quite a bit of damage there. No more elite target. So as you can see, this is why I say Hibana has one of the best ultimates in the entire game. Because you can really do a lot of different things with her. You can become a, let's say right through here is a rescue target. You need to breach through there. Your team needs to go loud. There's only 3 of you, but you can breach through this wall in 2 different angles. You've killed everything in the room pretty much instantly. You can chuck some C4 in there, stun grenades. You can even use your rust pistol if you need to, rush in there and just start going off with your shotgun, whatever you need to, however you choose to play her. She brings a lot of utility and versatility in terms of her ultimate. The downside to that is obviously that she has some of the worst guns in the game. So you want to keep that in mind. One of my best tips for you as you master Hibana is to remember that her guns are really difficult to master. They have pretty slow reload or low damage, and that's because of the level of utility that she brings to the game in other ways. They had to level her or master her or balance her in certain ways, and that is one of the ways they balanced her. One other thing to keep in mind, a pretty good tip for you, is that Hibana is really, really good when it comes to taking care of aberrant nests. So let's pretend for a moment that these are all aberrant nests and you've got, 4 full shots. So you can put 4 shots down on aberrant nests, put them down. Let's say there's a nest here and a nest here. You place them in between nests, etc. And then, your team is being patient. They're setting up their ult, etc. By the time that she deploys 5 or 6 of these, she can destroy almost all of the aberrant nests by herself, simply by hitting explode. So as you see there, I took out 2 of them. So you can kind of use her as a high explosive operator in order to take down aberrant nests pretty quickly. You can, in the right context and in the right environment and with enough patience, you can really take out about half the nests without even doing much of anything. Now, one other thing I want to talk about with Hibana, and this is a pretty high-level skill that you'll eventually master, is that you can use her as an area denial operator to a degree as well. So let's say we're defending a sabotage tower right here. You can kind of deploy a couple of these. Let's put one more out as it recharges here, and as I'm talking, I'll let it reset. So let's say there's a sabotage tower here, there's a sabotage tower right here, and your team is set up with some turrets. You've got a whole defensive position. You've got some, reinforcements down. You can set your Kairos down here, just like that. And now you have 2 lanes that are denied. So if anything rushes through here, you got an Apex that suddenly appears right there. You got a Smasher over here. Boom. You want to make sure that those explode on them because they are explosive and they are one-time use. So if you have the Apex over here and the device is right there, it may not hit them. You just got to make sure that they're on top of it or pretty close to it in order to fully maximize the effectiveness of it. One other thing to keep in mind with her explosives is that they ignore carapace, which means that they will knock or stagger smashers. They will ignore the front carapace on smashers. Any kind of armored, let's say for example you're dealing with a armored protean like Smoke or Sledge, and you need to do a bunch of damage to them quickly. Pull out your ult. It will ignore any kind of carapace there and do additional damage to them. No. Without having to worry about getting behind them or hitting them in a weak spot. So just keep that in mind. That's a pretty important tip with Hibana. And just try to master out her kit and trying to find new and interesting ways to use her. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Hope you learned something. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. And please let me know if you have subscribed to the channel. Please like the video. And remember that I am live Monday through Thursday over on Twitch at Merkaba18. I do a lot of Maelstrom and endgame content. I play with viewers all the time. So please make sure to stop by and follow the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.